Well, good morning, everybody. Good
Hey,
morning.
going live in, sorry, going live in 7, 6, 5, 1, live.
Good morning, everybody, from wherever you are, and very, very welcome to you on behalf of the HR Congress team. A very warm welcome to our session on Future Disrupted, Key Trends Driving the Future of Work. It's another innovative event brought to you by the HR Congress and also made possible through the support of Workhuman. And today we have basically a 3-in-1 session where a lot to bring you, including a look at the future of digital transformation, where the well-being strategy is going, and also insights from a panel of global HR leaders on what they see as emerging in these areas of well-being and digitalization, but also in other areas as the future of work continues to unfold for us all and at pace these days. So you're very welcome, and just a little bit of introductions from me before we get kicked off, and firstly, just as well as to acknowledge HR Congress, particularly to also acknowledge Workhuman, and given the topics that we're discussing this morning, we're very fortunate to have Workhuman as a partner today, given their global leadership in the whole area of the future of work space through people-oriented technology and helping companies really energize their cultures and employee experiences through their technology. They've been consistently Workhuman, at the ahead of the curve when it comes to the business impact, I guess, and the human need for recognition and connection, and technology-enabled solutions as well, particularly now when we're working in a more fragmented way, in terms of hybrid working and distributed and fragmented work models. So thank you to Workhuman for supporting today's session. As for me, thank you to Mihai and the team for inviting me to just chair the session today. Essentially, I'm just here to help bring these various strands that we're talking about today together, and also to get you to where you need to be by 12:30 Central Time. So please feel free to connect with me, and we can continue the conversations after the event today. I guess my background on this issue particularly is my focus of work is in the whole area of future of work strategy and implementation, with a background in people and leadership development originally in technology, and I've added a couple of items and resources in the handouts section there for you to look at, and as well as an extract on my book Thrive in the Future of Work, and I guess which brings us to today's topic. And before I introduce some of the guests and speakers, perhaps just a little bit of context, for today's session. I suppose one common thing we all have on this call is in HR has been dealing with this future of work topic, for many years now. And while we're trying to deal with, I suppose, the current and next phase issues that are presenting with us, particularly at the moment with everything going on our plate, we're also, aren't we, trying to read the signals of what's coming at us in the changing world of looking at what's right in front of us, but also what's on the horizon that will impact our organizations and indeed our workforces, so that we can bring some of those signals into our current plans today, so that we can be as future ready as we can be. So we've got this kind of dual antennae, if you like, going on all the time. And if you take this quote, for instance, from 6 years ago now, seems like an age ago. But as Harvard said in their work on the state of the future of work in 2019, for many people, it was while the future of work was real, the trends and the converging forces that we're all aware of were very real. It was like it hadn't quite landed yet for everybody. Obviously, if your job was being automated, you knew all about the future of work, but it was still appearing for many of us, according to the research, that we were still operating on 20th century kind of models of work and norms, with what was an increasingly complex and growing 21st century set of circumstances and challenges and issues for individuals at work as well as for organizations. But there was something, wasn't there, about COVID that sort of gave us a common global moment, as it were, where some of these trends and signals that we were kind of aware of came crashing into the present for everybody. And those that had read those signals probably earlier found themselves, in areas like enabling technology, for instance, distributed working, flexible working, agility, and so on. Those who had read those signals and had already conducted experiments or had brought them into their cultures were far better able to deal with the disruption and the shock of that particular disruption, of which there are many. So it's that idea of being aware, I suppose, of the signals and being able to be aware and bring them into the current is really a theme of today. If you take, for instance, the area of work flexibility, something that had been signaled for some time. Before COVID, I was on in 2018 on a employee of the future workforce, and one of the top issues for employees and workers was flexibility as well as skills. But flexibility in terms of the sort of unsustainable way work was going at the time, commuting, childcare, elder care, and so on. And now we're dealing with work flexibility on steroids, aren't we, in terms of particularly the where issue, in terms of hybrid and distributed working. But also, it's even that issue is bringing to mind this wider agenda of work flexibility in terms of when we work, 4-day weeks and so on, gig working, talent platforms, all kinds of technologies, automation, etc., impacting not just now, but in the future, this whole area of work flexibility as a theme, if you like, that we're going to have to attend to, not just now in the present, but also reading the signals as to what that particular topic is going to mean for us in the future. So I guess as part of today, we're just spending a bit of time, yes, dealing with current issues that are presenting us, but what do you think? I mean, what would be some of those longer term signals and trends that you feel that you're going to need to take account of or pay attention to, so that you can bring them into your plans, bring them into your resourcing, your talent, some experiments, your technology. And we actually have a poll there, Mihai. I think if you could activate that poll, the first poll of the day is just asking you, what do you think? Looking beyond your current priorities and what's next. What's the next sort of wave future of work trends do you see as emerging priorities for you in the next 2-3 years that you may need to bring into your strategy and your planning? Is it continued focus on work transformation, building on the remodeling of work that we're seeing right now? Is it digital transformation? Is it how do we sustain this agility and adaptiveness, that we have experienced and create that as an ongoing sustained capability rather than just an episodic, if you like, necessity? Employee well-being and engagement. And even like Unilever and others who are looking at a broader, longer term future of work strategy, trying to join the dots, as it were, in terms of looking at the ESG and societal change, employee change, and technology, and bringing a kind of a long-term vision into the future of work. So just interested in your thoughts, and maybe that's probably time enough, Mihai, if we want to close that poll, but just interested to have a look, and we can see what the sort of answers are, and it's very interesting to see there. Said digitalization at 20%, health and well-being 26%, agility, talent, and skills. So 3 or 4 very, very clear. Love in the chat. Maybe you can put in what other trends you see there. So it's good to know that at least 2 of those are the subject of today. And just to give you a quick run through of what to expect. Very shortly now we'll be hearing from Derek on the whole well-being strategy side, SVP strategy and consulting with Workhuman. I'll introduce him in a second. We'll be followed then after that by Matthias Reuter on digital transformation, transforming leadership in a disrupted workplace, to kind of really open up that theme of digital transformation. And because really those 2 themes, no matter what we're currently doing, there's no doubt that digital transformation and well-being are going to be part of that longer term signaling, if you like, that we need to bring into today's plan. So delighted to have these global leaders in these areas to talk to us today. And then we're very fortunate to have a panel of global HR leaders, Stuart Curtis, Nadine, and Stuart, who are going to join us to just reflect on those topics, but other thoughts they have about the signals and the issues they see hitting us in terms of the future of work strategy. You've already done this, so thank you very much. Through the polls, you can see how that works. So it's very easy in the platform. So engage with us, please, through the polls. If there's particular questions you'd like to ask to any of the speakers, use the Q&A. But if there's comments you want to make, suggestions, anything you want to say in the chat, that's the place for that. But specifically, we'll be looking at the Q&A in terms of questions. So if there's a question in the chat, we may not see it. Make sure it's in the Q&A. So let's get started with the main items of today. And I'm really delighted to introduce you to Derek Irvine, who is SVP for Strategy and Consulting. He leads the Strategy and Consulting Services Division for Workhuman. And he's also one of the world's foremost experts on employee recognition and engagement and continuous performance management. He's the co-author of several books and widely published in many of the top HR and management publications around the world. So, Derek, a pleasure to introduce you, and welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much, Kevin, for the introduction, and thank you indeed for the invitation to be here this morning to share with you some perspectives on wellness and well-being and what that might need to look like in the future. Because as you mentioned, Kevin, we have some very unique challenges that none of us would have forecasted just 2 or 3 years ago. So I'll just bring up my slide. So there we go. Excellent. So as you mentioned, I work for a company, very privileged indeed to have worked for a company for the last 2 decades called Workhuman. And our goal as a company is to indeed make work be more human, bring more humanity into the workplace. And what a good goal that is. And we do that through, I suppose, 2 means. One is we are a software company. We provide software that you'll see in a moment, some of the ways that we facilitate that. But the second way we do that is through our movement. And a little bit about me. I am so privileged to be the host of that movement. Every year we have an annual conference that attracts thousands of leaders and HR professionals that are interested in the topic of bringing more humanity into the workplace. I launch that conference every morning with a huge "Hello, humans!" and everybody stands up and we have a very human connection moment, because at the end of the day, you know, that's what it's all about, not putting a mask on at work, but bringing your full human self. You'll see we've had some pretty important people join that conference over the years, HR luminaries, business leaders, but also Viola Davis, you'll see there, Michelle Obama, and many others. You'll judge by the accent too that I'm originally from Ireland. Worked for many years marketing Jameson Irish whiskey around the world. I now live in Spain with my husband, my camera shy husband. We have double twins. We have 2 girls and 2 boys. We're renovating a historic house in the Canary Islands. And one of the things that I love to do in terms of my work-life balance is, after I've taken the kids to school, do some emails, coffee, is to catch a swim in one of the natural swimming pools that I'm lucky enough to be located beside. So, you know, a work-life balance that I certainly am extremely, extremely fortunate to have. I'm also the co-author of, as Kevin mentioned, a number of books on the topic of humanity in the workplace. Our most recent book is called Making Work More Human. It captures the story really of 2 decades working with some of the world's most admired companies. And working with those companies, we saw a framework that's focused around 3 really powerful words. The power of thanking each other, of saying, I saw what you did and I want to thank you for what you did. The power of talking to each other very authentically and often. So forget about the annual performance review, but talking about your skills and your development on a much more trusted, continuous basis throughout the year. And then celebrating together. One of the most underutilized opportunities for creating human connection in the workplace is celebrating the life that is going on around us, the exam success, the marriage, the new house, as well as work anniversaries and project milestones. Those things can create human connection moments. But what I want to do first of all is to say thank you to all of you, a moment of gratitude for all of you for taking an interest in this topic of wellness and well-being, because I'm going to share with you a perspective which maybe is different to how you've been traditionally thinking about this. So thank you all for coming today. First of all, a personal thing that I've noticed over the past 2 to 3 years is, the importance of friendship in the workplace is something that has for decades been seen as vital. In fact, it's one of the Q12 questions from Gallup. And I want to open up a poll and ask you all, have you successfully made lasting friendships at work? Because I think friendship is a really important part of a wellness strategy. So go ahead and submit your answer. Very good. And we'll come to the poll results now, I guess. Or maybe we'll take the second poll first, and we'll come to the poll results then. The second question that I'd like to ask you is, do you think it's become easier or harder to make friends since everything that has happened? So just a quick answer there. Go ahead and look at that pretty high percentage already for the harder. Well, actually, that was just one person that clicked. So go ahead and click whether you think it's easier or harder to have friendships. And I feel, there we go, 76% of you saying it's harder. So we have real challenges in the workplace because friendship and a feeling of human connection to the place that I work, the people I work with, is really important in terms of a wellness strategy. And we're going to look at that in a moment. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to base a lot of this on some data and evidence from a Workhuman and Gallup survey that we conducted with 12,000 employees around the world, 6,000 of those, by the way, located here in Europe. And the goal was to look at what would amplify your wellness. So here were 5 foundational blocks that Gallup identified in that survey to anchor and amplify wellness for employees. One is career well-being. Am I utilizing the correct skills? Do I feel my career has progress? Social well-being. Do I have friends in my workplace? Do I feel connected in society generally? Financial well-being, of course, something that's under a lot of stress and strain right at the moment, but I think we understand that one extremely well. The physical well-being. Do I have the energy and the endurance to show up at my most engaged and productive self? And then community well-being. What community do I belong to? And is that community supportive of me? I think particularly here powerful is the role of ERGs in organizations to give focus on maybe some of the communities that struggle most of all. So those are the 5 foundational blocks that were identified in the Gallup survey. But one of the really surprising, and this is the thing that I think you're going to find is a unique insight, is the power of recognition and the power of saying thank you as a key strategic lever to amplify and boost well-being. Let's see what the survey results found. What it found over here on the left-hand side was that when recognition plays an important role at their companies, employees are 91% more likely to say that they are thriving. I mean, that number is huge. I can tell you the Gallup consultants themselves were surprised at how overwhelmingly evidential this is, as the power of being seen, of being thanked, of being recognized, that it has a role upon my wellness. Employees who receive the right amount of recognition are 84% more likely to say they thrive, and employees who are recognized twice a month are also twice as likely to be thriving. So some pretty strong evidence, and we'll see more of that shortly. Gallup also conducted focus groups, spoke to the various respondents, and here's some of the things they said. When people see your hard work, it simply makes you feel good. It can be the difference between a good day or a bad day. I mean, think yourself. If somebody gives you thanks, says, I see what you did, I recognize what you did. You know, what you might not realize it is that it actually releases a hormone in your body. It releases serotonin. It almost gives you goosebumps because you're feeling seen. And this is like a natural medicine. Here we are talking about wellness, and I have a completely natural medicine that I can offer to you to be giving to your humans to boost their well-being. And that medicine is thanking, recognizing, and celebrating together. It literally gives you wings, to coin a phrase from well-known advert. But recently recognized employees are 40% less likely to have negative emotions and 2 times more likely to feel a sense of gratitude. You know, the interesting thing about the human brain is we have a limited amount of space in our human brain for thoughts. We can fill our brain with a limited amount, and they can be either negative or, well, more often than not, obviously a combination of negative and positive. But if we fill our brains with more positive thoughts, it actually pushes out the space for the negative thoughts. And that's quite literally what is happening here. That hormone is released, you're filling your humans' brains with more positive sentiments. And as a result, the remarkable thing that Gallup discovered too is that it can shield employees from burnout. Now, we all know the World Health Organization classifies burnout as a syndrome. There's a pandemic, I think, of burnout, caused obviously too by all of the stresses around COVID, where it can lead to detachment, negativity, cynicism in the workplace. And burned out employees, well, they're 63% less likely to show up for work, and they're 2 times more likely to be looking for new roles. So they're, you know, that's a costly issue to have in your business. But what the research showed was that employees who were receiving thanks, being recognized, they're 73% less likely to feel burnt out, and 56% less likely to be looking for new job opportunities. So the complete reverse, where we can fill our employees' minds with positive thoughts and goodness. So back to that work friendship as a lever to create connection. I mean, you all answered that you've had friends at work. I know I've had friends at work that have made an enormous difference. That can be the reason very often that you go into work, to share the mission together. And as you all, majority of you emphasize, that's become more difficult. So the research looked at this area too. And what we discovered is, you know, we're losing our sense of connection. Connection is so important in terms of human energy and just being human. The results are pretty depressing in many ways, because 25% of employees, only 25% of employees feel a connection to their workplace culture. So that's a huge majority of employees that say, I just don't feel connected to the culture. And employees with no meaningful connections at work, so no friends or no other meaningful connection, they are 9 times more likely to be disengaged. So talk about wellness, talk about feeling under the weather, not feeling socially connected, not getting that positive boost. I mean, this is something that you have available to you as HR leaders. We have available as HR leaders as a very easy fix, because it's a problem. Employees with no meaningful connection are 3 times more likely also to be looking for a new role. So what are some of the things that we can do to remedy this? If you're thinking about well-being, you've got your financial health interventions, you've got your physical well-being interventions. What are you intentionally doing in your workplace to create meaningful human connection? That's what my recommendation is to you. You have to think, what are we doing intentionally to create human connection? So my first recommendation is to celebrate life events. As I said, deeply underutilized, to be celebrating birthdays, exam success, work anniversaries, a new house. Of course, project milestones need to be celebrated too. But these things that happen in our lives around us are a unique opportunity to create a spark of human connection between people and help grow that human connection in the workplace. Second recommendation is to crowdsource your recognition. Don't just make it about the manager spotting when something good is done and needs to be recognized. Make it peer-to-peer, make it grassroots up. so that we as a community, and I feel a part of that community now, are being asked to celebrate when we see each other doing important things. Again, it creates a human connection, a spark. It releases that hormone, and it aids and benefits, as we saw in the research, my sense of well-being. And thirdly is lead by example. Make friends by being a friend. I just wanted to share with you a little bit of how Cisco looks at this. Cisco is a long-term client of Workhuman, and they have an employee recognition program that is called Connected at Cisco. Now, of course, Connected at Cisco emphasizes their technology business being connected in the world, but it's also the emphasis that they put on connection with their human beings at work. And you can see there that they focus down on two types of well-being. One, we talked about earlier, the personal well-being. How am I doing? Two, social well-being. How are we doing as a collective? And they too find in their experience that obviously those with the highest well-being are doing better. They're more productive, they're more engaged. So as HR leaders, we need to put forward a business case for this. Wellness and boosting well-being is really important, especially in the future where we have challenging new workplaces. We need to invest in well-being intentionally. I'll give you a business case. In Gallup, and they've been looking at this whole area of well-being and engagement for decades, as I think many of you will know, they discovered that when 10,000 employees have a low level of well-being, I feel, low on all of those 5 pillars, it can cost a business 20 million euros. If that goes all the way to burnout, that figure is astronomical. They estimate 324 million euros if you have 10,000 burnt out employees. So this is an area that we can invest in. The levers are there in front of us, very simple to utilize. And I encourage you to think about wellness, not just from physical wellness, not just financial wellness, but I think particularly the wellness of your human connection in the workplace. So an action plan for you all before we take some Q&A, be strategic about this. Think about thanking, celebrating as a key strategic initiative. It's not just a nice to have. It can help boost those numbers very dramatically. Invest smartly. Think what you're spending on pay increases, bonus, health insurance, all of those things. Do they have a clear ROI? Because the ROI of simply seeing people and celebrating together, I just gave it to you, and it's massive. Celebrate together. Celebrate the well-being initiatives themselves. Upskill your managers. Educate them as to how they come to work and see people and thank people can affect people's well-being. And of course, lead by example too. So very finally, if you want a copy of this report, it's packed full of more data than I was able to get through. It's called Amplifying Wellbeing at Work and Beyond Through Recognition. It's published by Gallup and Workhuman. You can scan that QR code right now with your phone if you wish. Or I believe HR Congress, if you click on the handouts, I'm sure it is indeed in there too. Excellent. So we probably have a couple of minutes to have a look at if there were any Q&A.
Great, thank you so much, Derek. Really energetic and positive presentation, and just really amplifying and kind of what we know intuitively in terms of the human condition, if you like, in the workplace, and the impact. And I noticed, as well as your own research there with Gallup, I just noticed even the last couple of days, University of Cologne coming out with their research on the impact of employee beyond recognition, actually. Just beyond recognition, also just general employee interaction and behavior around healthy behaviors and attitudes, and how that affects the overall culture of the organization and their impact on their employees' well-being, if you like. So that whole kind of chemistry that we probably underestimated perhaps before, it's great to see the science now behind it. The other thing I noticed too was as well as impacting positive indicators, it's also so important for dealing with negative indicators. So it's like a double win. Some questions coming through, and something you often hear too in the recognition space. Stefano, there, if you want to see yourself there in the Q&A, Derek. But one of the things that really is probably on some people's minds is the risk of the celebratory events and the recognition, etc., becoming a little bit tick the box. How do we keep that sense of authenticity going? How do you
Yes.
keep it fresh? So I'd love for you to address that before we move on.
Absolutely. I mean, you mentioned the magic word, authenticity is key. But I often ask an audience to put up their hand if they ever feel they've received an overdose of gratitude and thanks in the workplace. And I've yet to be in an audience where anybody puts their hand up. So it's one that we worry about a little bit, but it rarely goes wrong because we know how to do this in our day-to-day lives. I have 4 kids, as I mentioned, double twins. What if I was holding back the thanks to kind of an annual kid appreciation day, the annual kid performance review? I mean, my kids would be off the rails. And we absolutely know how to do this. I say, I love you. And I say, I need correction on this. You can't do that constantly. So we know how to do it in our day-to-day lives. And that's really just what it's about. Bring a bit more of how we do things in our day-to-day lives into our real lives, but do it with authenticity is that magic word.
Yeah. And of course, as well, that great statistic we know about the positive to in terms of feedback, the 5 to 1. If we don't generate that culture of positive, authentic feedback, then when it does come for the difficult conversation, that conversation is harder because we haven't built up the habit, if you like, of the more positive reinforcing recognition.
Right. Built up the habit, and I would also say the trust. The right to give me that developmental feedback, because people, and we see it in the research and in the data, people will run away from that developmental feedback if you're not seen as somebody that's got my back. You're not seen as somebody I can trust. If you're not somebody with whom I have a human connection. If I have a human connection, and that can be helped by you celebrating the good things when I get it right, then you are way more open just to take that developmental feedback too.
You have credit in the bank, as it were, to be able to draw on. We probably need to move on. Maybe you could, there's a couple of other questions then, maybe during the session you can go back to Anastasia and Stefano and others. If there's any questions directly, that'd be great, Derek. Can we come back to it at the end of the session?
Right. Well,
thank you so much for your remarks, and see you towards the end of the session again.
Yeah, bye-bye.
So now, folks, we're going to move on. If I could invite Matthias Reuter to the stage. Pleasure to meet you, actually, Matthias, and to welcome you. Matthias, the Senior Vice President and Global Head of Siemens Leadership Excellence in Siemens, and really helping leaders. I guess you'll tell us a bit more about helping leaders, which seems like a really important point in mastering digital transformation. Because if it doesn't come from the leaders in terms of all of the natural ways in which digital transformation and what it really means and how it's going to impact. If that doesn't happen at leadership level, how can we expect it to filter throughout the organization? And we'll be continuing that conversation with our panel shortly. But Matthias, maybe I could open it up to you and allow you to introduce yourself and thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me. I'm very happy being here. And Kevin, having this, transformational conversations here, and the dialogue that is so much needed, and the unprecedented change that is going on in our environments. And as you framed it, leadership is playing a vital role in shaping that transformation, even accelerating the transformation. So we see increasing, clock speed and acceleration that is going on, and not easy probably, to cope with that. And we see very clearly that our leaders, and of course together with their teams, play a vital role in shaping this. So Siemens is now, we just celebrated our 175th birthday, imagine. And I think one of the really fascinating things is that muscle that is existing in that company to again and again be able to reinvent the organization, to reinvent, the things that we are doing, and to be very adaptive also to the changes in our environment. Today I have for you, and as I read already through some of the comments, and Derek, very interesting already, presentation that you gave, addressing a lot of key topics that I will also touch upon from that angle of leadership. I will give you a kind of frame. How do we see current trends? How do we see the environment, and what does that mean also on a company level, on a strategic level? And then 3 examples I have with you, how we are currently tackling some of the, I would say, also biggest challenges that probably we all have and we all don't know exactly. Yet, I just wanted to give you some inspiration, I hope, how we are tackling some of those topics and what our current thinking about it this is. So let me start with setting the frame. So as we all know, we are all in this. We see unprecedented change, accelerated change in very fundamental ways. And the current situation that we are in, with the pandemic, with the war that we currently have in Europe, all these kind of things we haven't thought of, or we were not expecting. So this is more and more getting for us all the new normal. And on a technological level, of course, also driven by digitalization, that unprecedented speed of change that we see, that is advancing at an exponential rate. And I think I'm not over exaggerating in saying that Siemens in this regard is undergoing the biggest transformation in its history. And by combining the real and the digital worlds, it's possible to transform. We are shaping the future of entire industries. And I think we all need to encounter that people are at the core of this transformation inside the organization, in our broader ecosystem, but of course also with our partners, with our customers. So the situation that we are in is, I think, very challenging and at the time also very exciting one. So stepping a bit deeper into it, what's happening around us? And I think some of the data you're fully aware, and also of these trends. I'm not telling you something new, but the whole topic of digitalization and even going beyond, I think the next level of our industries must be more than digitalization. It's very much digitalization is the enabler for new forms of, I call it, radical also digital collaboration, where we can really be very sure about the core value that we contribute in an ecosystem to, at the end of the day, solve some of the biggest problems that we have on this planet. And this is at the time also a huge business opportunity. If you look at the topic of decentral power generation, 67, around 70% of power that is generated decentrally. So the topic of smart grids, digitalization comes in very much, is getting huge, and will also help us, to enable that we are not that we keep on that level, that people are in 10 years what we are used to, usually in average experiencing 2.5 power outages. And to keep that in a more and more complex also decentral power generation network, digitalization plays into that. We just cracked 8 billion people on this planet. In 2030, we are expecting 5 billion in so-called megacities. So the ones, a lot of colleagues here from UK, from Paris, from London, from all over the globe. So we all know what that means and what it means for the requirements of suburban passengers each and every day. So a clear trend, and digitalization can play a massive role in optimizing this. 40% of our global energy consumption is happening in buildings. So again, also digitalization, smart buildings, a huge lever to save energy in those buildings already during the construction, which is actually the major source of CO2. yet also throughout the entire operations. So massive opportunity. And that's why, we as Siemens, we position also ourselves in making our customers, making societies more sustainable, more productive, increasing quality, increasing flexibility by combining real and digital worlds. So bringing that together. And an excellent example of that is our just recently launched so-called Accelerator. This is a marketplace, a platform where our customers can, in a very flexible and open way, also configure more or less the solutions that they need. And it's also fueling a very powerful ecosystem where, let me say, the solutions that are needed to solve the big issues that are resulting, from example, from changing regulations in the markets, from a completely, changing expectations when it comes to sustainable solutions and so on. So a massive shift also in our way how we would like to generate value together with our partners and customers. And this is also at the time for us a business opportunity. And I think also if we think about sustainability, I think it's a strong belief of our customer, of our company, and at the time I think also on a global level, because we have so different requirements in different markets, be it verticals, be it regions, that also putting the whole topic also as a business opportunity is probably also the biggest service to those changes that are ahead of us. And this is a huge business opportunity and definitely also the area where we would like to grow significantly. Yet it comes along with a lot of uncertainty. And now, of course, we're talking about people here. We're talking about our employees and our leaders. And you also had it in the announcement of this event. The VUCA, and now we call it BANI, and this kind of abbreviations that are just a symbol for where we're trying to describe what is happening out there. And I think it's a very simple logic, and probably this curve can be even steeper, that the unpredictability and the speed of change is increasing massively, while the part of business activities that are rather stable, incrementally changing, are decreasing more and more, while the other part is massively increasing. And that's the simple part of the story. And this is just about to start. Yet, often in those strategies, when we look into the strategies of big corporations, then the human factor, and just relating to what we were just hearing, is not recognized enough. And therefore, overarching strategy where people are at the core, where the topic of people centricity is much more incorporated and really taken serious, is, I think, a key for companies. That's where the change is starting. And you can see this from various studies. You mentioned it before, Derek. So, now, especially throughout the pandemic, that a lot of people are really over the edge, so to speak, thinking about quitting their jobs. They don't feel, recognized by their organizations, but also by their leaders. They don't feel that sense of belonging. So does really their personal purpose also fit with the purpose of the company? Is that a topic of an ongoing discussion? And therefore, I think with all of those regions, I think it's not something that is done in an HR department. It's a fundamental part of corporate strategy. And this is also how it needs to be positioned. And now, with setting that frame, how we are looking at the topic currently, what are we doing? And I just have these 3 examples, how we are looking at leadership, how we are looking at growth and learning. I'm a deep and true believer of people growth and continuous learning, and therefore I think we also need to change the logics in that regard, and also how we look at performance and performance management. I think there are, of course, a lot more topics that we need to look at and that we are also looking at currently, but those are, I think, three very, obvious ones. Yet, if you start such a journey, you should really start with the why. I often experience that also in my profession, being responsible for leadership development. Um, we are already talking about the symptoms and then jumping right away into conclusions. I think it's really in that complexity that we are all in. Start with the why do we need to change things? And one of the key drivers that with all the things that are happening around us, that we saw is also that shift towards a different form of collaboration, a different form of leadership, especially driven. And a very nice example here is, I think, how we work together in this kind of ecosystems. So this was the first step. And this is the journey that Siemens is going through, really from digitizing our products, connecting them with the cloud, getting the data out, making sense out of the data. The more we know about, then also our markets, about our customers, about the real challenges, maybe even challenges they don't see exactly. Providing the respective services, X as a service, including new performance contracts, performance models, and then building the ecosystems with partners together, next level of value creation. And we derived some of the basic principles. This is also how we started with our top management. And I think it reflects very well what's happening around us and some of the fundamental shifts that we need to take. Sounds easy. There is more flesh to the bone. If you're interested, we can also go in another time into a deeper discussion about it. But I think it's very much about shifting our focus to the outside of the firm. Often the case, if we would like to scale those kind of digital business models, we see resource limitations. And we have sheer or theoretically unlimited resources out there in the market. And with, for example, new platforms, we have a low-code application platform, Mendix, is part of our portfolio, where nearly 300,000 developers are on this platform and doing their low-code application programming for the challenges that our customers that are out there in the market. So you can learn together with that ecosystem, probably even not possible to build up something internally, but it requires a completely different set of capabilities for our leaders. So it's really also different thinking about value creation. Create more value than you take. It's about growing the cake, the entire cake together with your partners and not trying to share, to maximize your share by being transactional and trying to pull the other a bit more over the table. So it's a different thinking, and people will feel that. I always say, trust by default and assume good intent. I think trust seeds trust. If you invest also in this kind of relationships, then also the value will come back and the next level of value will occur. Design for network effects. I think from that classical competitive advantage with results out of sheer size and supply side economies of scale, really going through what network effects. So how can we create meaningful connections? Where are the people? Where are the producers creating additional value for consumers? And to create this to foster this kind of cycles. Much more scalable than, let me say, doing each and everything on your own and protect, so to speak, your competitive advantage as the center of the value that you create, and therefore opening up, but not in a naive way, rethinking control, really being aware of control points and maybe completely different ways of contracts, of how we interact with each other. And last but not least, inspire your ecosystem. I see, some of really also very inspiring leadership teams that we have. Also people in the, thought leaders in the organization. It's not a hierarchical thing, but it's a different, way. I sometimes say, inspire people you don't know to give you ideas you don't have. That sounds now a bit opportunistic, but it's so true, reaching out, providing value, and then things will also come back to you. And that's a different logic of how to manage a business. And this is how the whole story started. This is the why. Our purpose is transforming the everyday together. No company has all the resources to do it on their own, especially not in the software world. We need to reach out to others and find new levels of joint value contribution together. We have clear strategic priorities. That's now, the integrated part that I mentioned before, that we customer impact, technology with purpose, yet also empowered people and growth mindset as part of our overall strategic priorities as a company. And their leadership, of course, comes into the game. You can think about a lot of strategic levers, what we already also do. You can structure your portfolio differently. You can talk about organizational structures. You can talk about partners and alliances. Yet leadership was one of the things where we were also, having a focus on thinking about, okay, what do we need to change? And there it was pretty obvious that we had that classical picture of a leader describing the perfect, I would say, general manager in 10 dimensions, where you can measure from 0 to 10 if this is now the right lady or gentleman to manage and drive a business. And who are we to define this? If we really if we really expect the fact that we are in many regards entering uncharted territory, who are we to define how leadership should look like on a global basis? For sure, we have clear values, we have clear strategic priorities and values, which is a fundament, the common cohesive core for us as a company. And there are also non-negotiables in there, certain behaviors that we as a company would not accept, yet really making it real, discussing it with the team in an open dialogue, fostering the diversity of different perspectives, building on clear strategic priorities. This is what we need. So a more a learn it all mindset than a know it all mindset, because a lot of the things that we know, we probably need to unlearn because it keeps us from growing into the future. And this is now sounds maybe probably very logic to you, but I think also having this discussion in our leadership team and thinking about, hey, we need a different kind of leadership, and we are also sending a different signal to our people to really empower them to contextualize and to make it real in the situation that they are in, because there's probably not the one leadership style that fits each and every situation. You need to be much more adaptive, understand the situation, and talk openly with your people what is really needed here to make it happen. The next step was then to really look also further into then really into the implementations. We were really we abandoned the complex static frameworks that we had. We also had them in all colors and shapes with all kind of buzzwords that you can imagine. Yet we thought, okay, did they really deliver on the promise? What's the value that is in that? And then we were moving towards that more dynamic picture of leadership, fostering massively diversity on all levels, and building on that common cohesive core of our values and strategic priorities. Plus, and I come to that in 1 second, that's really then the topic of performance management and how we look at it. And the other topic is really the growth mindset. How are we fostering a learning, call it a learning culture, call it a learn it all behavior, rather than a know it all behavior? And we are completely restructuring also the whole learning approach in our company. We have massively invested also in the digital learning and really the availability of excellent content based on a highly individualized model that we have here, where you can design and also build your own individualized learning experience, learning journey, which is a part of it. And we are enabling our leaders also to make use out of it, to make sense out of it, to include it into their team development, to include the learning and to share the learning, model the learning, and to create, we call it learning zone versus performance zone, create really learning zones, space where people can grow in their jobs, by having certain safety nets to reduce risks when we really try out new things, and also spaces to learn completely new things. And it's also part of the culture. And the third element that I wanted to share with you, may be interesting, that we completely, shifted away from that classical performance management process that we had in the company, taking a lot of energy from, yearly target setting, continuous performance reviews. Then we had the big rounds where, there were also the salary discussions taking place, the performance discussion taking place, leaders investing a lot of energy and time in appraising their people in all colors and shapes, which is of course important. We very much believe in development, yet the whole process was not really delivering on the promise. So we said, let's turn it around. Let's really focus on growth talks. Let's focus on the growth of the individual people, and move away from that very purely performance oriented, from that traditional understanding of performance, of the performance management process with a system behind. Our leaders have the freedom to do their to do the documentation in whatever format they think is necessary. The expectation that we have, that they do regular transformational dialogues with their teams and with their people, and that we foster that kind of continuous learning and continuous growth of our people, and that's a key leadership task. So completely moving away from the classical performance management towards a much more growth-oriented and future-oriented approach. So those were the three things the three concrete examples that I wanted to share with you. And actually, we are now right about, also in the whole activation of our entire of all our leaders and also our teams to really work with that, to really make it real. And the first feedback we get is actually very, very positive, and it makes us also, confident that we can further shape that journey moving forward. So thanks a lot for your patience and the time, and maybe there are a little bit more time for questions, Kevin.
No, indeed, Matthias, and thank you so much. There are a couple of questions, and one just quick one just came in there. From Michelle. What do you mean by transformational dialogue? Could you just give a little sense of that, because that sort of talks to, I think, other questions about what this leadership looks like, at the kind of conversational level. When you're talking about leadership principles and leadership behavior to create digital transformation culture and around that. So what do you mean by transformational dialogue? Can you give some examples maybe of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what you mentioned also before, with regard to authentic feedback, I think it's a two-way street, and this really needs to happen on eye level. So the the expectation, I think, also from our people, and this is really going, towards the leaders, yet also the other way around, that there is a real open conversation about the strengths. We are usually focusing very much on the strengths, of course, also on opportunities to further develop things, but we truly believe in a strengths-based approach. We have, for example, Strengths Finder implemented, which is also tooling that helps a lot as a basis for this kind of discussion. But it's not, that this is needed. It's really an ongoing dialogue about individual purpose, about how does that connect with the strategic priorities that we have here in the team, what is needed, and what are the little changes, and then an open dialogue about what do you really need, what kind of support do you need, and how can we make it real as a team.
Yeah.
And I would say a very pragmatic way of leadership, open, build on trust. That's why we also say we very much believe in humble leaders that are also role modeling this. Because if you're not asking for feedback, why should then your people ask? And for fast forward learning, I think this is crucial. So that's what we understand with transformational dialogue.
Dialogue, yeah. No, it's a powerful statement. It opens up so much possibility, and what I'm going to try and do is get a handout put into the document into the handout. It was back to 2016 actually, so it's quite a while. But it was ATT's journey in their transition from sort of analog to digital, and all of 250,000 people to suddenly, to try to create a digital mindset. Really is what what was interesting there, and absolutely in line with what you're saying, is this idea of creating a longer term story with the why. You started with the why and talking about the longer term, and not panicking people that, like, overnight they're going to have to become digital natives and transform their work completely, but setting out a roadmap that actually this is the journey we're on.
Yeah.
And actually some jobs and some roles skills are going to end up redundant. And I don't mean that but just we are on a skills journey, but doing it in a very authentic way, a positive way, that we're because we're progressing that way because of our story and our customers, etc. And we're with you on this journey, so it's a longer term journey, and we're going to put in place things to help you along with that journey. You mentioned the performance management system, but I remember they were coming up with a jobs portal for roles that didn't even exist yet, but they were trying to send a message that roles were changing and life was changing and skills were changing. And it was that sort of gentle but firm, if you like, guidance that we're on a digital journey and you need to come on this journey with us, so a bit of messaging there too. So very good. And in the Q&A, I also ask, and I think you probably answered that question, particularly when you started talking about the digital principles and the activities that leaders can do. But thank you. And I think, if it's okay, we're going to maybe merge this conversation into our next dialogue, Matthias, and thank you. And your remarks, as well as Derek's as well, just shows the interchange between these two topics. I mean, you think of digital transformation and well-being, but for me, they're a very obvious link, in the sense that the uncertainty and relentless exponential rise in digital is coming at a price, isn't it, in terms of individuals? Like, how do we keep up with that? How do we deal with the uncertainty? How do we make change sustainable for people? How do we make them feel comfortable with that, journey and change, and not overwhelmed by it? And hence the kind of well-being strategy and the digital strategy actually become quite important as cousins, if you like, in the overall people and culture strategy. And you've brought that, you've just brought that human dimension.
And exactly as you say, Kevin, and especially I think also from a people organizational perspective, really also starting with the why, on a level of the business rationale, but also on the perspective of society and people. And having a very, very, very good and also inspiring story, but also authentic one with the upsides, the opportunities. Yet there are also certain threats in it, and then laying out, okay, how will we tackle it? And if we all don't know exactly, let's learn fast forward. Let's do it in an iterative and an open way, with also constant feedback that we give each other. Where are we on the way? And I think this kind of humbleness and openness is needed. And that's a different management style, and also a different mindset than if we come along like, we know it all. We have done it all. We know it all. And that's the big difference. So curious about the discussion already, Kevin.
Yeah, no problem. No problem. Another example, if people want to Google it, I think it's Deanna Mulligan, Deanna Mulligan. She was the ex-chief executive of Guardian Insurance, and she did an interview with McKinsey talking about her leadership journey as she tried to bring the organization forward into a digital kind of world, from a very traditional world. So thank you so much, Matthias. I'm going to now, if you like, move into our conversation now. So one of the things we wanted to do was to bring in our guests, if they want to come on stage with me. We're really delighted to welcome Stuart Curtis, who is Senior Director of Global Talent Development with Workhuman. I guess, Stuart, one of the things about you that you'll be sharing with us, you have the challenge, quite a big challenge, of trying to convert, I suppose, the mission of Workhuman that Derek eloquently put out, and you have to try to bring that into the inside the organization, which would be very, very interesting to hear how you're doing that. And Nadine Abraham, most welcome. Another global leader, has held many global HR leadership roles, currently driving the people and culture strategy. Interestingly, in connection with the last talk, Matthias, you're doing that, aren't you, Nadine, towards a net zero strategy as well.
Yes.
So trying to again guide the culture, nudge the culture towards that net zero and circular economy. So we are very, very welcome. Lovely to have you here, and Stuart Coiter, Global HR Director, Employee Experience and Service Delivery with ABN AMRO. Most welcome. And a pioneer in the area of employee experience and all things future of work, and just a pleasure to have you all here to just maybe share your perspectives, your thoughts, your reflections on what you've heard, but your own ideas, perspectives, what you've been doing in terms of this next phase we're going through on these two areas, but also any other related topics that come to mind. So you're most welcome. And again, invite people to put comments in the chat, or indeed questions to the panel as well as we go, and we keep an eye out for them. So Nadine, can I start with you? Just maybe if we take the general topic, I'm sure it'll go anywhere, but if we take that general topic of the digital transformation, continuing on that whole cultural and people agenda around digitalization that Matthias talked to us about. What's your thoughts on that, and what have you been doing in that area? What's your thoughts about the future?
Yes. Thank you, Kevin. Thanks for the warm welcome, and very inspiring to listen to all speakers, and also especially to you, Matthias, here on the Siemens transformation journey, so to say. Yes, we in Alfa Laval, and you mentioned that from an energy division perspective, we're driving a lot overall from a company, but of course we are very much in the core of what is our daily reality now. It's from an energy crisis perspective, so that is where we are in the core of energy efficiency, but also clean energy, and then on top of that, circularity solutions, so to say, that come into play. And when it comes to these, and you mentioned that so nicely before, like it's kind of connecting all these dots, right? Hearing a lot around sustainability. For me, that goes very much into, of course, it's well-being is a very important part of that. Matthias, you talked a lot on the inclusion element here, the diversity of the workforce that needs to make that all happen, or that we make that happen together, right? As well, but then in the combination with the digital transformation. And for us, we, as a rather decentralized, organized organization, it was a question on like how should we, or we were looking into how shall we accelerate, find a way that could, help to like accelerate our digital transformation from a business perspective, and that we took a group approach in a way to say, let's ask our front runners here. Let's ask the ones that are actually either bring a special, passion, competency in that, or, are already front running in the areas that they sit in, independent on the level or area across the whole organization. We pulled them together kind of a little bit into a network, roundtable discussion over a certain frequency of months, saying, and here it comes with what you mentioned before, kind of the humbleness, not we going in and telling this is what we want to, achieve, and this is, the classical target timeline and all that. But we started with what does it take actually to accelerate this journey from your place of where you're sitting in, and start that dialogue together with the aim of over a certain period to develop like what does it take from a cultural perspective, but also from a way of working, leadership, all that came up in that sense. And then we also took a quite iterative approach to that, right? Between these different roundtables that we have facilitated across the organization, we actually said very consciously, we will not design the next roundtable after we finish the former one, right? Because we really want to deeply listen. What are the topics that are coming up? How can we synthesize the different themes that are coming up? And then also, how can we then prepare for the next discussion on that? And we came out at the end of the process with a very clear input on this is what we need to drive. Also partly differently, of course, as a company, but also what we also be able to send a very clear signal on, yes, and you are empowered to do that, right, to our front runners here. In the last roundtable, we even had our CEO in and had a very open dialogue on, okay, where do we see signals and process here on the different areas, and how does he relate to that personally as well? And I think that it was something that you phrased it kind of in a way that was a very different way of democratizing, so to say, the dialogue. And there was such an energy also that was created with just being together and having that dialogue and coming to a very clear result on this is what we want to do differently.
It's really, really interesting effort, Nadine, and took a lot of time, but that you used the word democratizing the agenda. So rather than it staying as top down, it was also this bottom up idea as well, that it's we have a shared accountability for this, digitalization agenda. And with that democratization and input, you create this sense of empowerment. But then the next stage of that is accountability and responsibility, right? So, that the investment, the return on that investment, obviously then is so important for the future when the tougher choices come down the road in terms of the actual changes that emerge.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, and also, to continue that dialogue, and one of that what developed out of that was kind of saying, like, we want to have a kind of a tribe or a network across from a data science perspective, right? It was like, this is not about an organizational structure change, but this is also, like very much to the learning element that we heard here before, and the growth mindset, how can we benefit from each other's knowledge, but also the curiosity that there is, right, to share more across, and also to be together on a learning journey in that sense. I think that was a very important part of that exercise as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Nadine. Maybe Stuart, if I could turn to you, your thoughts on the sort of digitalization. I guess one thing you have so much going on is the employee experience side of this, and sort of the digitalization and the whole fragmented workforce, and having technology as a canvas in which the employee experience is experienced, and all the things that go with that. But any other and other thoughts you have on this topic?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Kevin. Really appreciate the way that you portrayed that as the employee experience canvas. It's a super way of capturing it. But Nadine, on what you were outlining there, I was kind of getting excited about it and thinking about, like, what we do is we drive our values and behaviors through our recognition platform, and it's completely digitized. And I see a question from Anastasia asking about the difference between, etc. Well, it's all digitized and it's all completely remote. We see everybody as equal. And Derek kind of flagged that, equitable, authentic and personalized recognition is key to driving, the connection. You're 5 times more likely to feel connected to the values of an organization if it's authentic recognition. You are 73% less likely to feel burned out. So as you try to drive that initiative, Nadine, if you had an opportunity to recognize when people are fulfilling that dream, when they are connecting with it, when they are delivering on it, and that recognition is seen by everybody in the organization, which is, I think, the cool thing about digitized recognition. We are co-headquartered in Dublin and in Boston, but we have a highly fragmented and remote workforce as well. Derek is based in the Canary Islands, so Derek gets to see recognition moments and call-outs for everybody across the organization, as we all do. So I'd encourage, and Anastasia, just to answer that question, I would encourage you to digitize it and take that approach, because it removes things like proximity bias from recognition. And it democratizes it, again, to capitalize on that term, democratizes recognition and makes it authentic and genuine. And sorry, Kevin, I'm going to like pounce a little bit here because I also see some questions from Stefano. Stefano, you asked some questions about, in one-to-ones, you've added an achievement corner. As a very private and introverted person, I would love to explore that with you more. If that puts the onus on the employee to talk about their achievements with their manager, personalized and pure recognition, where other people recognize me for in my one-to-one.
Is that Stuart? Are you with us? Yeah, no, I think it
Oh
was.
my!
Yeah, no problem.
There we go.
You're back.
We're back. I will hand it over to Stuart in case we're.
No problem. Yeah, no
problem.
problem.
I will follow up with Stefano
Exactly.
on some of his questions.
Exactly. No, I appreciate it, but thank you. It's just so interesting about the range, how digitalization is just impacting everything, and it's and Stuart, I'd love to bring you in on that because we've talked about the kind of the top down, the market, the exponential convergence of these technologies, and Matthias and Nadine talking about how to get that culture from a ground up point of view as well, and then Stuart talking about the employee experience and everything being done. What are your thoughts on where this is going, if you like, and just generally?
Yeah. Well, thank you, and thanks for the introduction. Yeah, it's all these topics I recognize very much. So we in our company, we have around 26,000 employees across the globe, and what we see and what we have seen and what was greatly introduced by you is that we're experiencing the greatest global shift in work for a century, right? And realizing that is also realizing that we do not have all the answers. What we do know is that the expectations that people have from work are changing radically. And realizing that is that the theme of the future of work, we shouldn't view this as a single problem. It's multiple questions at the same time, like we will have been hearing right now as well. And for me, those are three main topics. I would say creating an employee experience first. Two, the question of how do we stay productive and effective, of course. And the third, and that was also at the first part of this presentation, is how do we nurture a culture of recognition and connectiveness. And those three challenges are, I think, very important. And then there are still a lot of people also in the leadership, I would say, globally, is that are still not quite sure about why is this so important now. And I think that's because the majority of the workforce is aging right now. So the availability of skills will be smaller as we go forward. And that's where the challenge is. And then the question is, and that's a question I've been having also for a long time, how to move forward. Because the reflex of a company is, let's just create a set of rules, right? Let's create a set of rules. In hybrid working, for example, let's come to the office 2 or 3 days a week, or let's do performance management in a 1 to 5 scale, and that's it. And you have a conversation once or twice a year. So those type of rules, they give us guidance. But what we see now is that just having a set of rules is not working anymore. So the question is how to move forward. And I think moving forward is on the one hand, having that central view of what do people need is very important, and that is changing. That's one. And I think also our approach should be very much led by data and the needs of people. For example, what Nadine was talking about, right? Having these sessions and learning what do people need and why. The growth mindset. We are using data, advanced analytics to get a sense of what's happening within the company and what do people find important. And I think also, thirdly, we need to challenge the assumptions we have. For example, in the previous presentation, there was this percentage, about 25% feel connected to the workplace, right? That's only 25%. My question is that because of hybrid working, or was that for years now a percentage of 25% already? So the reflex is what's happening right now in the future of work. We need to perhaps change back a little bit because it's a low percentage. But maybe the question is, hasn't this always been a low percentage? And then the question is, how do we work? How do we go forward? And that's challenging these assumptions. And I think to your point also, Kevin, technology plays a crucial role here as an enabler. It's not a goal in itself. And we in our company, we are using a lot of technology, even a platform on learning, a recognition platform. We have it all. But the challenge is, how do we use it? And how does this lead to these three main topics I think we are trying to achieve? And then, the last topic I would like to stress here, the conversation tends to go in the way of what do employees need or what does the organization need, and it's right in the middle. So the reciprocity in that conversation is very important to move forward, I would say, and that's a challenge I have on a daily basis here to get that going. So that's more or less the view I have on this.
No, I really love the way, Sjoerd, you are boiling down all these big mega trends into kind of some 2 or 3 clear outcomes that you're trying to. So the employee experience, because we have this talent crisis, we're trying to attract and retain. And then it's interesting, you mentioned performance and productivity, if you like, and culture of recognition and connectivity. I think it was Gartner who came out with the researcher in the summer who said that the 3 kind of concerns, the concerns that people have with the hybrid and with a more fragmented model of work is culture and connectivity, and performance and productivity, and they're the issues we're trying to solve for. So anything we can do to bring that. And what the other thing strikes me about your comment too is what it is we can give people to succeed. We can't solve for all these issues as HR, but what do people need to succeed, and how do we use data on that? And I suppose that maybe brings us to, in terms of what people need to succeed, that the sense that you hear too is this we hear about the burnout and we hear about just the ongoing relentless pace of change that the people have been going through in their personal lives, and now we've got new issues in terms of inflation and job security, and the Twitter issues have been mentioned on the chat as well too, and this level of uncertainty. So it does bring this well-being in terms of what people need to succeed. This idea, whether it's to do with the digital transformation or just working life in general, there's something about a new wave or a new phase in thinking regarding what is well-being and how do we create that beyond what we've done traditionally. Maybe just to finish up, could we talk a little bit about that topic? What your thoughts are about the next wave of well-being strategy? What comes to mind? Nadine, maybe back to you. Just go back in order again. Just your thoughts. Sorry, you're on mute.
The classical one. Yes, thank you. Yes, sure. No, I think there is no, as it is also with, from a sustainability perspective, I think it's very interesting. There is also, of course, there is no one silver bullet, right? How we solve, those challenges. And it's probably very much the same on the well-being angle, so to say. I think to me, and that's the same actually for inclusion diversity. I think it boils always down to, where are our people in position of high influence? How do they role model on that? Can they go in? Do they feel safe to say, this is my journey. This is what I have learned. Can I create the trust level there, and the psychological safety of, yes, this is kind of, human, to put it very, very simple, right? I think that's one angle to it, and that will probably, despite all the uncertainties, right, that we're faced with, that will probably be one area that will always play one of the major elements that going forward. So how do our leaders and the people that get in, that have the ability to inspire, I'm not talking people responsibility only, the people who have that power to, or that talent to inspire and come in with the credibility to drive that change. How do they act? How do they behave? And the second thing, I think there's also where it can maybe nicely connect to the digital transformation element. I think there's so much also in this where we have a lot of digital devices that can enable us also to drive our own well-being, or give us data on our own well-being in that sense, right? And I think that's, of course, different people prefer different things, and that is an overall theme in many ways. But, I think there is some potential here to lift somehow in a way that we can, use that in an ethical way, based on preferences. So as said, it's not everyone's cup of tea, but there is something here and saying, like, how can I maybe challenge myself a bit also with the data input on how actually am I behaving, right? Where do I spend my time? Am I utilizing it in the best way also to refuel my batteries, right? What angles can I maybe try out, or what elements can I maybe bring in a different way? It's also very much of an iterative. I think also for me personally, it's always an ongoing calibration. Kind of how do we design our week? Where is the influence? Where can I shift a bit? Because we are whole human beings, right? I think that is kind of a ongoing calibration element. I think, and then as employer to think about strategies how to cater for that with the different demographics, of course, that we have in our workforce. That will be a constant topic going forward. Yes.
No, Nadine, there's so much in what you said there, and you brought in that area of personal responsibility, which I think is actually something that's really key here as part of this honest dialogue now with the next phase of work. That with all this flexibility comes responsibility. So, and that includes that when you're not well or when you're struggling, etc. And accessing the tools to be able to give information on that. But of course, with that sense of responsibility, you need to have the psychological safety on the other. You need to be able to put your hand up in a culture of psychological safety, and so that's what you've really. And when I'm picking up all the words and the themes from this morning, the idea of learn it all, authentic, human, psychological safety, honesty. These things are really coming into a kind of almost like an ingredients of the leader of the future to create that culture in which people can thrive, and if they're struggling, to be open to say so and take their role and responsibility in this as well. And Stuart, that plays very much into your territory too, in terms of just that, having that open dialogue, but also having the data and the insights to be able to back it up.
And I think that's where the humanity, and I really appreciated Stuart's point about the technology is not the point of it. It enables you to get to places, and similarly Nadine's point around seeing the human, the person at the back of that data, but the data does lead to some insights. But it's all about, as Derek pointed out, that thank, talk, celebrate. We drive a culture of conversation, of open dialogue, and I know one of the questions in the Q&A was around, hey, how do you know how people are feeling? Well, we send out regular full surveys, like many organizations. But we personalize it to the person. We ask them about how, our surveys have changed over the last few years since COVID. The questions we ask are more around, how are you feeling? How are you doing? And then we publish what we are doing about those, responses. We often hear about survey fatigue, but it's more around lack of action fatigue. When we look at it, companies ask these questions and don't do anything about it. They just gather that data. but we're very transparent about what we are doing constantly to enable our humans to be better in work and to have more fulfilled lives.
Thanks. And Stuart, just any last, before we finish up, any last comments on that?
Yeah, so it's I loved the framing at the beginning of this presentation, right? It's well-being in your career, social, financial, physical, and community. Yeah, so I think that's a very good framing. We always try to frame it also as a sustainable performance, and we are. What I hope. Let me try to round it off with that. I hope that more and more companies are going to realize that this is a sustainable competitive advantage, right? Where and how people work is going to be of crucial importance if you are able to attract new and future talent. For example, imagining a future where you can just go and surf in Portugal and do your work, for example, which is happening, by the way, more and more. That is a future that I think is very realistic and is happening already and will happen more and more. And the well-being part needs to be flexible in that. If you are a parent, a young leader, or whatever. So what we've been trying, very practical also, we have these smart watches, right? So we now have a pilot with 500 employees already, and we collect the data with them, with a pool of coaches, and we are really trying to figure out what's the best ways to get your well-being and performance at the same time. Right? So I think there also the use of technology can help us a lot. Yeah. But I really hope that we all realize we're just at the starting point of to realize what is well-being going to do for us, I would say.
Sure, it's a wonderful way, and I'm afraid we're going to have to bring it to a close. But I just love the way you finished it there with the fusion of imperatives for us, in terms of performance, well-being, technology, employee experience, and the need to create this compelling, proposition as to why you should work here. And again, technology allowing us to have flexibility around that. I think you've managed to capture so many of the themes and topics, and the signaling. And I don't know if Matthias and Derek are there. Please join us here on the stage. Come off onto video if you like, because I to honor people's time, we just need to probably finish up. And I just wanted to thank you all for a very, very engaging and wide-ranging discussion. I hope for people it's validated maybe some of the thoughts and strategies they already have, but for others maybe, as we said at the beginning, maybe it's providing some signaling, if you like, through the stories and insights of these leaders about what is coming at us. And if we can bring some of those likely signals from the future into our strategies and just try experiments, a bit like Sjoerd was talking about, our bottom-up strategies like Nadine is talking about, our technologies that Stuart and Derek have so well in Workhuman. Just hopefully there's some practical takeaways for you to take away and make the future of work a bit more present and real. And so thank you again, and thank you to Workhuman, thank you to HR Congress for hosting this event, and a very happy Thanksgiving to everybody, as Mihai says in his notes. So wonderful, folks. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.